I'm Daniel Goldman, co-owner and industrial designer here at MSB Technology. And today I'm joined by
Vince Galbo. I'm the national sales manager for MSB Technology for North America.
So we just invited Vince Galbo out to our listening room here in Santa Cruz, California, to listen to the new Cascade DAC. And I just really wanted to get your first impressions on your first experience listening to it.
I had great anticipation for the things that you described, that you heard. And you hit on some very key points about being able to pick out individual instruments on the really dense music. And that really got my attention because it's sort of the variability in digital, in my experience, one of the key markers. Mm-hmm. Having said that, we set up the Select DAC. We optimized it for power, cables, speaker position, got the best version of that that we know to be true. And then we put in the Cascade. And I will also say that we forgot to plug it in and let it warm up. So we took it dead cold and we put it in the rack. And immediately, it's a very different presentation. You have to sort of get used to it for a minute because it's so very different. And I guess I'm not ashamed to say that I thought I was having a bit of an allergy attack. My nose started to run. My eyes started to water. I thought, well, this is, distracting while I'm trying to listen to this music. But pretty soon the tears are rolling down my face. And I'm having a hard time breathing. And we're listening to a female vocal. And I just was beyond emotional. I can't tell you it's very hard to describe the specific things, but then when you go to listen for specific things, like where is the proximity of her voice to the microphone, that became immediately obvious. The sibilance that is so often annoying, especially on female vocals, and I liken it to when there's sibilance. It's a very brief event, but it's like tearing a piece of paper. It's a little bit annoying. There's something not quite right about it, and that's just a common experience with various grades of digital performance. Let's say maybe including lesser DACs. It became immediately obvious that when the singer said a word that started with S, it just sounded like air hissing through her teeth, which is what you hear naturally. The sense of sibilance was completely gone. And because she's so close to the microphone, sort of the mechanics of the mouth, the lips parting, and I noticed on a word like back, where there's a hard consonant, the part of that word was just immediately obvious. You felt like you were very close to her in hearing all this. And then the expression of the artist, that is something that I think audiophiles talk about. Is it convincingly human? And am I feeling the emotion of what the artist intended? And that, I didn't realize that that's what made me, start to tear up. I was so taken with that. And when they soar for a note for expression, which often can sometimes be a little strange, sound strain. It was natural. It was beautiful. I can't. I get a little choked up as I'm describing it. It's just it was so good. Instruments. As you described, I put on a recording that I know very well, and it's jazz, and it starts out nice, and you can hear the individual instruments in this particular piece. It builds up, and there's a lot going on, like all the horns are playing and all that, and you can choose to listen to each instrument, but even more telling is that the character of that instrument. This one recording, my son owned a Selmer Mark VI, late 50s serial number, properly patinaed and corroded, and that's the way, Coltrane and all the great horn players. That's the horn that they all went to. So my son owned one, and I heard it for years. And this particular solo, when it comes in the one channel, is just completely true to that horn. And I could hear the reed. You can hear the spit. You can hear. There's so many things to listen to, and you can choose to listen to them individually. And it's just a remarkable experience. I don't even feel like I'm describing it well enough. It was that good.
Yeah. I was also in the room, and, that impact from, the established select, that familiarity we have with its performance, and then to make that transition, even though I've been listening to the Cascade for a couple months now, was still just very emotional. And like, you were not alone in that room. There's a lot of people who were very, really drawn into that first impression.
Yeah. And one less experienced person listening to just an upright bass solo, so he turned around to us and he said, "I'm getting teary-eyed." I said, "Okay, so it's not just me." Another recording we put on was Peggy Lee Fever, 1959. And it's a great, jazz performance. I recently found out she changed the lyrics to make it more, make it sexier. So when I listen to it, it's beautifully mic'd. There's a percussionist. There's no drum set. There's a percussionist, and he's just playing, these little fills here and there, accents, very well placed. And it's mic'd way back. You can hear the whole room when he does that. And then the only other instrument is the upright bass. And then when she starts to sing in that recording, traditionally I thought it wasn't a good mic. Mm-hmm. It was a ribbon mic that had smoke damage, or it was a mic that was off spec, or it was just there was something up with the mic because her voice sounded sort of a little muffled and a little dull. And when we did it on the Cascade, of course, the upright bass are very well defined. The accents on the percussion, very well defined, and you could really hear the room. But when she started to sing, I thought, that's not a bad mic. I'm hearing the high frequencies now. I don't get this anymore. She's in a padded booth doing the recording live, looking through glass, and they're doing it at the same time, but she's in a completely different space. It was as soon as she started to sing that became obvious. And it's things like that in these recordings. We listen to other things, but it's in those recordings to hear that stuff, that spatial information, the reflection off the wall of the sound that you just heard, and to hear it repeated, it's how we perceive space. And I think it's the most delicate information. It's easily lost with previous, jitter and less precisions, things like that. And it also, for me, the sense of space also follows the beauty and the overtones of violins. You have many instruments playing. It's very dense. There's a lot of frequencies going on, and we hear it sort of as one, sometimes even smeared presentation. And to hear all of those instruments so separate, but beyond being separate, the overtones and the way the overtones interplay as it would be in real life, there's a beauty in that the Cascade communicates in ways I've never heard it. Mm-hmm. So I'll just say that the spatial information and the beauty in the overtones and things like close mic piano, for me, they always travel together. They get better or they get worse together because it is this delicate, precious information that's, again, easily lost with incorrect conversions.
Yeah, I really love getting your perspective on these recordings because you have, decades of listening experience and also your own personal, understanding of the instruments and just that real life reference to compare to. As a younger audiophile myself, I have gotten very good at listening for like the environmental details, the very, very like the the details that bring across that realism of space and like the naturalness of a voice, things that I'm more familiar with. But it is good to get that, more diverse experience to judge how we've done with this Cascade DAC.
Yes. Well, it's very interesting because I think it's a valuable discussion, especially to our clients and customers, that I always, it's a little humorous because I say, well, we're going to evaluate something in our systems, and we're going to, nobody's watching us. We're going to go to that one recording, and we're going to play that one recording. If it's, I used to joke about it, the CDs, and I'd say to people, how many CDs do you have? They'd say, oh, I have 700, I have 3,000, I have 5,000. They have these big collections. How many do you listen to? 5. So it's what are we after here? We're after the beauty in the sound, and we know that those recordings have that. Mm-hmm. So they're what I call our first tier recordings, and it's has been my experience, and certainly to a degree that, again, I have a hard time describing with the Cascade, that we put on that recording, and sometimes we will make an improvement in our system, and it's an improvement. We say, oh, I never noticed that little guitar part, or I never noticed what the guy's doing on the hi-hat. The thing with the Cascade is these recordings, my own, that I know every moment, and I'll just embellish a little bit and say, being a musician, I may be more sensitive to the purity of the overtones and the string. I play guitar, and I have several guitars, and I know the character, and I have several guitars because I'm sensitive to the individual tones of them, what they do best, and they even make me play different things, so maybe I'm very sensitive to that. So having said that, when you put on this recording that you know so well, and like you hear these things you never noticed before, it washes over you constantly. You can't keep up with it. It's like you have to listen to it again to say, oh, I'm going to listen to, the leading edge of the kick drum. I never heard the transient like that before, but then there's so many things to listen to. But then the other thing I talk to audiophiles about is the second tier recordings, those recordings that we say, well, this is a beautiful female vocal, and the drums sound nice, and the piano sounds nice, and you can hear the room, and the tonality of everything is really good. But again, as I said earlier, the sibilance is really distracting. It's out of character with the quality of the rest of the recording. Mm-hmm. So to hear that, as I said earlier, gone and shortened in time, the sibilance seems to have this like duration, and to have it be gone, shortened in time, and just sound like air hissing through someone's teeth, that's a revelation. And of course, everything else on the recording, as you would expect, sounds better. Another example I use is you put on a jazz recording. They tend to be great recordings because they don't use compression. They set up the mics and they play. Mm-hmm. So again, the instruments that are there sound good. It has a nice club space or a nice studio space, but there'll be 3 or 4 horns that'll come in together every once in a while and make a little musical statement. And it's smeared together, and it's annoying. And you say, what happened there? Why are those horns so distracting relative to the rest of the recording? And to find that presentation when they come in, now it is not only not annoying, but it's beautiful. You can hear them individually. You can hear the interplay of the harmonics, and even sometimes how the horn players are playing off each other, listening to each other and responding. And again, it's just the precision in what MSB's engineering department does, and that is to chase these precisions with the ever-increasing revelation of information.
Yeah, one of the things that you've repeated to me over the years is that you feel the information is in the recordings, and it's not the recordings that are the limitation to what we're hearing in the listening chair. And I think, as we take our technology, precision and accuracy, and increase it, decade by decade, we've come to a new level in that type of performance. And would you speak to me about that a little bit?
Yes. So I've been with the company since the mid-2000s, and there's always the next level of research that results in a new digital filter, or a better clock, or a better power supply. And we have always tried to bring the customer along. We have brought the customer along on the new technologies. And one of the things that's always been surprising to me is, it begs the question. They say, well, we've got this recording, but as I said earlier, it's got some sibilance, or those horns are always annoying, or the violins are all smeared together, And you say, well, it has to be the recording because it's always been that way. So, but for me, at each level over the years, that I think measurement and design driven, that the precisions have increased. And again, clocks, ladder technologies, all those things. Every time there's an improvement there, an engineering improvement, there's an audible improvement. You say, well, I never heard this stuff before, and I never, on these recordings. So the question is that, like, what happened in the studio? We've got this live performance. It's converted from analog to digital. It's committed now to the numbers. What's the quality of that? So if we call that, to whatever degree it varied in the studio, and I should say barring unrecoverable amounts of compression, we're not going to recover that. But even with reasonable compression, it seems these recordings just keep giving up new information as our precisions have increased. So, there's interesting steps along the way. One of the stories I like to tell is when we first did the femto clock, and I was pushing through some songs, and Pink Floyd The Wall came out. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I'm not a big Pink Floyd fan, but this particular recording, when the kids sing, we don't need no education, I thought, what is that weird effect on the voices? And it's some sort of processing. And then when I first heard the femto clock, so I let the recording was sounding good, and I let it play. And when it got to that point, I realized that they had left the studio, gone to a local school, got the choir, put them up on bleachers in the gym with tile walls, and that effect was the fast slap echo of the tile. Mm-hmm. It was as clear as day. So I called my brother, big Pink Floyd fan, so I'm telling him about this. He said, oh yeah, now everybody knows that teachers weren't going to let them, when they heard the lyrics, we don't need no education, they weren't going to let them do it, so, but then they convinced him it was art, and that, so things like that. And so I guess my point is that I often say, let's judge the recording last. And I started to say earlier, the second tier recordings, the ones that had some flaws, like the sibilance or the instruments smeared together, that it's surprising to hear all of that stuff gone and improved. And as I said, the parts of the recordings that can be annoying now are often revealed to be the most beautiful. Mm-hmm. So it's an accomplishment, but it's through progressive precisions over the years of MSB's engineers, and that's expressed in the product. And I'm tending to say these days, it's suspect the recording last. It's been a revelation, and I think that the Cascade to date is the ultimate culmination of that. It's shocking. 1644.1. We say, oh, it was a low res format, but I talk to more and more people that say, my transport on CDs is really good, and so high res is nice, DSD is nice. Sometimes those formats reveal more stuff, but I certainly have examples of 1644.1, especially on the Cascade. I'm floored. I'm just absolutely floored.
All right. If you had to sum up what expectations our current customers coming from the reference and select DAC could expect to hear by you swapping out for the new Cascade DAC, what do you think they could be listening for or expect to hear?
It's an excellent question. From my perspective, it's more information, which in the audiophile discussion is a dangerous subject because often we've had the experience where we say, well, there's more information here. Mm-hmm. But often you haven't finished that thought and you say, well, it has a cost.
Yeah.
I can't listen long term now. It's not quite, I can't say what's wrong, but it just, I can't listen long term. And you're pushing through, you listen to part of a song and you push to the next song and you're looking for the beauty and it's not there. So this impression of more information sometimes, in my mind, are the digital artifacts. And I say they hide among the true harmonics. Mm-hmm. And they're low level, but they're there, and we hear them, and like something's wrong. So when we go from the reference or the select, and we have the information that we have, and when you listen to the Cascade, there is, for me, an insane amount of new information. But what is a completely new experience, and I think for most audiophiles it will be, it's more relaxed and it's more beautiful. Mm-hmm. I've had, it wasn't the Cascade, but I've had new dealers try out, the Premiere, and we get a new dealer, and they say, I call my wife and I told her I'm not coming home. So it's that sort of thing, and where you can listen long term, and not only are you enjoying your best recordings, but now you're digging deep into your music. The recordings you thought were second tier, even third tier. People that listen to electronica, which really has no natural, they say, this is the best I've ever heard it. So there's a truth in the harmonics, and it's just very compelling. But on the trajectory over time of all the engineering and hardware improvements, and the core goal being precision, driven by measurements, which is another discussion, MSB's expertise. But to hear the Cascade and just be affirmed once again that this recording has all the information in it. It's there. It's 1644.1. The recording was done in 1962, 1959. It was done, last year. It doesn't seem to matter that the information is there, and the opportunity to retrieve it is in the reconstruction end of it, not the recording. And that's what, as I said, I cried.
Yeah. Yeah, we've all found at the factory that we've been listening longer and louder than ever before. And, often when you listen for a couple hours in a row, you get up from your chair, you walk out of your listening room, and you kind of have to adjust back to the natural world and natural acoustics. Yeah. But with this improvement, we have found that you can listen for 6 hours, you walk out the door, it doesn't feel different. Like that reproduction is so realistic that you're not having to create any, mental gymnastics to place things. It feels so realistic that you can just be present while listening to it.
Yes, yeah. You bring up a good point. It's in recent years I've come to the opinion that when we hear loudness, it's heavily weighted with annoyance. And I think I gave you the example. I have some construction people working at a house, and they have this little DeWalt speaker, and they play their music. And when I walk in the room, I go, why do they have that thing so loud? It's so annoying. If we measured it, it probably was, it might be 90 dB. So, and the same thing with, television and all the common forms of music reproduction. The digital is just terrible. And so when you say, well, I got to turn that down to an acceptable level, it's the amount of annoyance for me. And you could say, well, you're more sensitive as an audiophile, but I think everybody hears it. I really do. And so to your point, when I did my first demonstration, we pushed some of the recordings, and it's a remarkable achievement.
I really want to thank you for sitting down with me and going over your first impressions. It was really fun and exciting for us to, share this with someone outside of our factory, and get that long-standing experience and to see how that held up to someone who has been so familiarized with the Select DAC. And we cannot wait for all of our fans and customers alike to get this experience at your local dealer or at an in-home demo. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. And I will say that when you and Jonathan first called me about it and told me about it, and then you went on at length listening to different recordings, and you described the things you were hearing, and it was driving me crazy. And I moved my flight up, and I just, I really wanted to hear it. And it's, of course, exceeded my expectations. I expected some of what I heard, but not to the degree I heard it. And I didn't expect to think I was having an allergy attack when, in fact, I was crying and didn't even know it. I mean, give me a break. So it was... I appreciate it, and I appreciate my years with the company and what the engineering team accomplishes through pure science and just the passion of the engineering side. It's a great privilege to be involved.
Well, we love doing it for that very reason. All right. Well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.